Hi and welcome. This is our 8th COVID Community Town Hall, which is sponsored by the Stanford School of Medicine Office of Community Engagement and our Department of Epidemiology and Population Health. My name is Lisa Goldman-Rosas. I'm an assistant professor in our Department of Epidemiology and Population Health, and I also have the honor of directing our School of Medicine Office of Community Engagement. And as always, I am super excited to be your moderator today. Let's see, Hector, can you share the screen for me? All right, next slide. Great. Antes de empezar, bienvenidos a todos y todas que nos están escuchando en español. Qué bueno que nos hayan acompañado el día de hoy. Y gracias a Claudia y Eric, un saludo. Nos van a estar haciendo la interpretación de hoy y si quieren escuchar en español, favor de seguir las instrucciones aquí y hacer un clic aquí abajo donde dice Interpretation. Okay, muy bien. All right, so today's town hall is very special for several reasons. So first, this is the first time that we have been joined by partners from the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, from Stanford Children's Health, and the ALCOVE team and their youth advisory group. We are so grateful for their partnership and for sharing our Zoom stage today. We are really excited to welcome you in and have you. Okay, and second reason that it's special is we are focusing on adolescent and young adult well-being. So we heard from all of you, our community members, that you want to especially support the young people in our community. And today we are going to do just that. So to all the young people listening, welcome to our Zoom room. We are super excited that you're here. This session is for you and for your parents. So please get engaged, ask questions, drop us a chat. We really want to hear from you. Now, I've said this on all the town halls and I want to say it especially tonight. So we know that staying informed is really important for surviving the pandemic. Of course, we know that wearing a mask and keeping our distance is important, but staying informed helps us to manage anxiety and know the best evidence. So joining tonight is super important and we're so glad you're here. Okay, third, we're going to use a slightly different format from our usual format. So if you've joined us before, tonight will look a little different, or this afternoon. So I am going to hand it over to our guests shortly and we're going to hear from them and then I'll join you again for the question and answer. So speaking of the question and answer, we really hope that you will actively use the question and answer during the whole session. So if you see that button down below, Q&A, please be sure to start submitting your questions. While our speakers are talking, my team and I will be monitoring the Q&A. We may be able to answer some of your questions as we go, and then we will be passing the questions along to our panelists. Some of you even sent some questions in ahead of time, which is awesome, and we'll try to get to those as much as we can. Y también, si quieren poner preguntas en español, adelante. Okay, so one more thing before I get to introduce our panelists. I want to give a huge shout out to my team. So Glenda, Olivia, Hector, Patricia, you are on the screen, but we can't see you, but you're the ones that make these events so fun. So I really appreciate it, as do all of our attendees. And I wanted to say thank you. Okay, so let's see. Let's introduce the panelists next, I think. Okay, we have a really wonderful lineup today, and I am super excited to get to watch as well. So first, we have Dr. Steven Sust. He's going to kick us off. He is a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences here at Stanford and Stanford Children's Health. We also have Lilia Soto. She is the Youth Development Manager in the same department. So welcome, Lilia. And she's also in the Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing. We also have Jules Villanueva-Castaño, and he is an Education and Employment Specialist in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and also in the Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing. And then we get to be joined by 4 of the Youth Advisory Group speakers. So we have Alma, Mohan, Emily, and Zoe, and we're really excited to hear from both of you. So with that, I think I will pass it over. Is it Dr. Sust to you or to you, Lilia?
Nope, it's to me.
Dr. Sust, wonderful.
Thank you. Hello again, my name's Steve Sust, and I'm, as mentioned before, clinical assistant professor here at Stanford Psychiatry Department. So we're here today for a roundtable discussion with local community youth about COVID's mental health effects, especially from their perspective. After a troubling year of the COVID-19 pandemic, our collective concerns about the mental health consequences have become super obvious for everybody in our communities. In particular, this generation of youth and young adults has endured a grueling year that's only now seeing glimmers of hope as the vaccine rolls out. To be clear, the vaccine's deployment within a single year has been a moonshot for science and medicine that's never really been seen before. However, this historic moment is not much consolation for youth and the loneliness, their sacrificed milestones, and the constant vigilance in limiting further contagion. There's so many studies that have stated the obvious mental health effects of the pandemic, such as like the CDC's November 2020 report on the increased number of youth in the EDs with mental health problems and complaints. Harvard's Making Caring Common project released data showing that 61% of youth age 18 to 25 are feeling some seriously intense loneliness. That being said, however, we at the Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing feel strongly about early identification and intervention for mental health symptoms. So we're looking forward to kicking off discussion with our brave youth leaders today about what they're seeing and any pearls of wisdom they can share with all of us. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Anna.
Hi everyone, Lilia, Soto here. I'm the Youth Development Manager for the Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing. I get the awesome honor to work with our Youth Advisory Group members as we really start talking about youth voice and inclusion when it comes to developing a first ever in the nation youth mental health integrated care center here in Santa Clara County. The first 2 are going to open in San Jose and in Palo Alto, so we're really happy to be here. And I really wanted to also share that we are also recruiting for our Youth Advisory Group members. So if any of you out there get really motivated to be part of this collective and this movement to revolutionize mental health access for young people, please let us know. With that, I'm going to have Jules introduce himself next, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. I'm Jules Villanueva-Castaño, and I'm the Supported Education and Employment Specialist with Stanford Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing. My background is working in mental health wraparound teams here in Santa Clara County in direct service, but specifically working on crisis teams with youth for over a decade, as well as working with system-involved youth and mentoring programs for about the last 5 years. So my work around education and employment support for young people of late has really focused on meeting with teens virtually and gathering themes, concerns, and feedback on what youth are facing in the COVID landscape. Beginning in early April, I will be facilitating education and employment-related virtual workshops in collaboration with Santa Clara County Behavioral Health and Alma Counseling Center. And so, over the last few weeks and months in meeting with youth, there's so much that I've learned and learning from them in that virtual space. And so today, when we talk about these amazing perspectives, I just really feel like as an adult, it's so amazing to learn from youth how to help them heal. Thanks so much for being a part today of this critical conversation. And I want to hand it back over to Anna to talk about some goals and set the space.
Awesome, gracias. So I wanted to share our goals in terms of getting together and doing a little different than what you're used to here with the town halls provided by the Office of Community is the engagement. And so what we wanted to do, and when we connected with our youth advisory group members and to really just learn about their experience in dealing with COVID. So that's our first goal. What are they doing to deal with this pandemic and what's been going on? We also just want to provide some seeds for future dialogue, some direction, some support. And then as well, if we're able to, because I'm more interested in hearing from our youth, is really share about Alcove. I also wanted to say that along with the resources given, there's an Alcove presentation, the YAG flyer, some information for our young people hearing us today to talk about some information for them to be able to talk to their peers or their parents about mental health and just reaching out for support. So that will all be included with the screening. And so with that, let me introduce our youth advisory group members. So we're going to start off with Zoe. So for all of you, you can say your name, what school you're from and age, and then also share with us a little bit about your story of mental health advocacy. Let's give our folks here just a little bit more knowledge of you. Go for it, Zoe.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zoe, and I actually just turned 20, so I'm not even a teenager anymore. But I go to University of California, San Diego. I'm in my second year there. And for my story of mental health advocacy, I guess I started being more and more passionate about mental health in middle school. And I sort of noticed changes with my friends and with myself where I started struggling with my mental health, and I saw that in the other people I was around. And then in high school, I went to Gunn High School in Palo Alto, and they struggled with multiple suicide clusters there. So there were people that I knew and people that my friends knew who died. And so I really got interested in working with my school and working with the community in sort of how to protect all of these youth and how to make sure that we're all doing all right. So I guess that's sort of my story.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe. Mohan, why don't you share a little bit about yourself? So same question, age, what school you're from, and your story of mental health advocacy. Like, what brought you to us?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Mohan. I'm 17 years old and I'm a senior in high school at Basis Independent. And my story of mental health also starts in middle school. Just to summarize a bunch of more details, I grew up in an atmosphere of domestic violence. And for me, it was tough. I never knew who to turn to. I never knew who I could talk to about it because I didn't think anyone else would relate to or anyone else wanted to hear about what I had to say. And I was in a dark place for quite a bit of time, but I found my way out. And if it wasn't for a helping hand who grabbed me out of that dark hole, I wouldn't really be here. But what struck me is that it was so hard to find one person who's willing to help. And that's what I didn't like. So my goal with mental health advocacy is to make more people out there, to be able to get rid of that stigma of saying, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't help people. This isn't something that we want to deal with. I want to be able to be that person who can help as many people as I can and try to make the world a better place like that.
Thank you, Mohan. Thank you for sharing your story. Alma, same question for you. Maybe you can share your name, your age, what school you go to, and your story of mental health advocacy.
Thank you, Anna. So I'm Alma. I go to Notre Dame, San Jose. I am a junior currently, and I am 16. So my mental health journey and advocacy kind of began, well, I would say like 8th grade, sophomore year, freshman year. It was like slowly progressing. Like my awareness of the mental health state that a lot of our youth is in, like how much trouble a lot of us are just facing. And I have had a lot of friends who have, you know, attempted suicide and like self-harm. And I too have had like my own experiences with that. And I feel like I knew that I wanted to be there and somehow make some sort of change for future youth, because there needs to be, and everybody deserves to get a chance to feel happy and feel okay with themselves at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thank you, Alma. Miss Emily, saving the best for last. So name, age, where you go to school, and share with us your story of mental health advocacy.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So hi, I'm Emily. I'm also 16 years old, and I'm a high school junior at Basis Independent Silicon Valley. And I would say like everyone else or many people, my journey or experience with mental health advocacy also started around middle school. That's, I think for a lot of youth, is when you start realizing your place in the world, as well as like what influence you can have and what kind of influence you want to have. So at that point, between like middle school and high school, you come to realize like, or I at least came to realize how detrimental education can be. It's like you're brought up to want to get educated and have higher education, but at the same time, we don't discuss a lot of like the negative impact on your mental health that comes with education and like advancing in education. So I was interested in how that affected my friends and I, and just like the people around me in general. And I was also moved by like a lot of statistics about queer youth and their mental health, because so for example, suicide rates are much higher in transgender individuals. So that really didn't sit well with me. So I hope to continue my experience with that and helping youth.
Thank you. I think what's amazing right now is that I know each of you personally, and just with your intros, I'm already just amazed with the conversation that we're going to have today. I get to learn so much more just with every interaction. So thank you for being here, first of all, before we start asking you all these questions. And, you know, to share with our viewers and everyone who's part of the panel, to get us in the mindset of this conversation, we started talking about what were the needs that we were seeing in community? And just that one question really just shared so much insight from our young panel that we want to make sure that we share that all of the questions that we're asking today from our panel, they were all co-developed with our young members from the discussions that we had before this and preparing for this town hall. And everything really just resonated with them navigating the pandemic and what they're going through. And one of the things that I just want to mention before we start off with their questions was something that all of them, I think, set together in different ways. But they all mentioned that before the quarantine, if you wanted to start a conversation about mental health or struggles, or just wanted to talk to somebody, it wasn't as confined. We were able to connect with people face to face, whether it was your friends or your family, some really cool adult allies in your lives. And now it's not so clear how to like access these pathways for support. So with that foundation for all of you, let's go ahead and get started with our first question. So I'm going to hand it off to Jules. And I know all of you will be amazed by our awesome youth as I am. So thank you. Go for it, Jules.
All right, so a question for our panel, the first question. So what are you hearing from your peers in terms of the needs that they're going through right now, dealing with navigating the pandemic? And as a follow-up, are they feeling supported, and how are they accessing support?
And let's do popcorn style. So one of you hand it off, and then start it off, and then we'll pick it up.
Sure, I can start. So the first thing that would come to my mind is like loneliness. I think although most of us are still in school and you can see your friends virtually, it's still virtual. So we don't have that physical solidarity that we used to have, and that influences, I think, a lot of youth's like motivation to do either like schoolwork, or if you are working, then like that can also be influenced. So I think it definitely has a factor when you're not surrounded by people who do the similar or same things as you. Having like even just sitting next to a friend and doing your homework next to them, I think was something that I feel like I took for granted. And it's just been a very different situation to just like sit in your room all day and just do your work for however long you do it for. Something else also is everyone has heard of like something like Zoom fatigue. And just generally, a lot of my friends and I feel like maybe less supported in terms of like just like how unflexible Zoom can be. Bad phrasing, but how unflexible like online school can be, because some schools, depending on where you are, they may require you to keep cameras on, or like require you to speak when you may not feel comfortable, whether because it's just different, like speaking to an empty room when you used to be surrounded by classmates who physically are there to like support you when with your learning. Now you're speaking in an empty room essentially to like by yourself. So for one, that, and also we don't, I feel like personally, I think we don't talk enough about if students don't feel comfortable keeping their cameras on, how will teachers or how will educators and how will other youth support other youth through that and that, yeah.
I definitely agree with what Emily was saying. To just add something just a little further, I think a big issue that a lot of youth are facing right now is just like being in their home environment day after day after day. Because although like many people might have really good relationships with the people in their houses, other kids don't, unfortunately. And so not only does that impede on your school life, but it also impedes on your mental health a lot because you're there constantly, right? You're surrounded by, those are the only people you're really surrounded by. So I think that's just a really big issue right now for many youth.
Kind of along those same lines, I guess at least to start, is I think that there is definitely this sort of lack of social supports, or if you do have them, you're lucky and you're close with people who you live with, or it's happening virtually over the phone. And then at the same time, at least like for me, I really experienced a lot of anxiety around coronavirus. And so then you're having these feelings that are related to COVID and you have less support than normal. And I think that that sort of brings a lot of issues in itself, that whatever you're struggling with before is now sort of exacerbated by this pandemic. And then kind of figuring out how to navigate that when really you have whoever you live with and the people you can reach over the phone or over the computer. And it's something that's already kind of hard to talk about, and then having to figure out how to navigate it in this whole new way, I think is definitely complicated and has to do with how people are feeling now.
Yeah, and to build off of what Zoe said, she mentioned this lack of social support. I think that's very, very true, because when we're in person, it's easy to have, simple conversations with people, people you're having your day-to-day life with. But now with the pandemic, it becomes so much harder to reach out, to be able to have those simple conversations, because in order to do so, you need to text them, you need to join a Zoom call, you need to use something like that. And it becomes so much harder to reach out and find like a simple person to talk to. And because of that, I feel like some youth feel as if they don't want to be a burden to other people. They don't want to add on to how much pressure their peers have on top of the pandemic itself. So a recommendation I would say is just try and be as accessible emotionally to your friends as you can. Let them know that if there's anything that you want to talk about, I'm always going to be here. And that can change someone's world in the matter of 2 seconds, just by letting them know that, hey, I'm here to talk if you want to. Because I feel like, as everyone said, Emily, Alma, Zoe, there's that lack of social support, right? We aren't talking to people as much. We aren't meeting with them. Those doing homework next to them on a table, we don't have that anymore. We don't have those basic conversations. So just letting your friends know that you're there for them for a simple conversation, a call, a talk, it could change someone's world.
Kind of building off, I think Mohan made a really important point, and I think that you can also sort of see it from the other side, in that as a friend, it feels a lot harder to be there for someone, because obviously your only option is really over the phone, or maybe social distanced if they're in the same area and you're outside and everything. But as a friend, it's just a lot harder to see the signs. And so I think on top of, as a friend, making sure you're reaching out more, I guess I would also recommend for anybody who is struggling to kind of keep in mind that like there probably are people who want to be there for you but can't, and that even though it's sort of uncomfortable to reach out, it's hard because those people don't really have the normal signs that they would if you were in a physical situation, that they could maybe catch being able to react, reaching out more important at the same time.
Thank you all. That was beautiful. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I was amazed at the number of head nods, not just amongst the youth, but also the adults, as we were just feeling that the zoomed out sort of thing and the loneliness. In fact, you've already touched upon some things already. I don't know how many, I'm a big movie buff, and Pixar created a movie called Inside Out a couple of years ago, and the main character Riley goes through this massive life transition and does it with in a lot of painful silence, because she doesn't want to burden her parents with just how sad she's feeling about relocating to the Bay Area. So along those lines, you've already talked about it. One of the concerns we hear about is some young people thinking that their needs just aren't like enough to warrant getting any support or getting any attention. Do you have any kind words, things that you want to share with youth in the community that are trying to figure out how to get help either for themselves or maybe even their friends? I know it's a little bit hard to really think about that one, but in some ways you already touched upon it really. And just, Mohan, you were just saying that you just want to be accessible, to sort of extend that hand and try to let them know that, you're available. And I think that is a difficult thing to really be able to think about when you are having a hard time.
I think something that's super important, when you said that some people believe that maybe what they're going through isn't considered like that bad or enough to seek actual outside help, like therapy, seeing a psychiatrist, a psychologist, things like that. I think something that everybody should know, that if you're feeling anxiety, stress, if you're feeling depressed, that is a natural human feeling. You don't have to be clinically told you are depressed or you have anxiety in order to need to seek help, because if that was the basis that you needed to be diagnosed for everything, then nobody would feel okay about themselves. I believe. I think that I think it's, as a society, we have set the bar for depression and anxiety and just different mental health issues so high that people feel like they have to reach that high in order to get help. And I don't think that's fair. So maybe somebody else can expand.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Alma said. I definitely think that if you're starting to feel sad and you don't know what to do about it, it's just always better to reach out. It doesn't matter if you're reaching out to a friend, or if you feel like then, even if you start with a friend and then it turns out you might need something more. I just think that, especially like nobody, well, maybe a few people, but not very many people have lived through a pandemic like we are right now. And so I think that kind of any feelings that you're having that are sad or anxious, like we can just consider those as normal, because who knows what we're supposed to be feeling in a pandemic. And so I think that just moving through those feelings with whatever makes you feel at all better is the right answer. If that's reaching out to a friend, if that is telling your parents, if you are close with them. But I don't think there should ever be a thought of like, oh, but I'm fine, that stops you from doing that.
Definitely. I agree with what both Zoe and Alma said. On the topic of like something that I have found that helps me like come to realize what my needs are, and also like what I hope for other youth to like come to realize what their needs are and how they reach out to get those needs fulfilled, is like, yes, these feelings are normal and natural, but that doesn't mean that like they don't deserve to be addressed, because sometimes like I feel like people just say, oh, it's normal, so everyone feels that way, so I shouldn't like have to ask for help, because like yes, it's normal, but that just means that like it's a big and overwhelming emotion and or like feeling and experience that regardless of who you are, you shouldn't have to go through it alone. Just because you may be feeling it to a greater extent, that's just like relativity. And I think that's something that has changed my mindset a lot, is just like what the relative effect of different things are. So yeah, we all feel stress, but we have different coping mechanisms and how we deal with that. And I think like it's definitely important to understand like how can we just like open the conversation to everyone figuring out how they want to deal with that, whether that is in like smaller self-care like methods or techniques compare, or all the way like throughout the spectrum to getting professional help. All of that is natural and none of it is too much, because like we're all human. So like if you're feeling it, then you're feeling it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
To add on to what Emily was saying, I totally agree. Like if you're feeling it, you're feeling it. Like if you feel like you are sad, if you feel like you need like extra support from somebody else, like you deserve that. You deserve as a person, as an individual, to get that help. Because sometimes we can't do it on our own. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think that's a large stigma in mental health, is that like we need to kind of figure it out on ourselves so that we're not on a burden to others. But that's why there are health professionals, and like we have friends, right, that we can just like talk to, kind of like be there for each other. I just think a big thing that right now that we need to say to our youth, and not only just our youth, but just people in general, that if you feel like you need help, then you deserve to go seek that help, to go get that help.
Well said. I feel like I need a hug right now. It's just such a hard time. And it's just so to say that I think everybody is sort of in the survival mode of sorts, and that we're all just, trying to make it, not trying to bother other people. But you all raise a great point, which is how do we continue helping ourselves and then also helping those around us? Because, at the end of the day, we want people to come to us for help. And how can we then close ourselves off when we want other people to come to us for help too? It's a reciprocity of sorts. So for what it's worth, I think it's great to continue talking about this, and it's clearly like a larger thing about how do we seek out help, and where do we get it from, and then what do I do as the friend who wants to help somebody else who I know has been struggling, as I've been pounding out pages and pages of text messages over the phone.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. One of the things that I wanted to share before I ask the next question of our amazing panelists that I bet all of you are just like thoroughly amazed with right now, is that with the handouts that we included, there is a resource. Is the handout that was actually developed by some of our youth advisory group members. And on there's phone numbers, there's national numbers, there's local numbers. There's the virtual youth that Santa Clara County Behavioral Health is doing with with all of the feedback from this youth advisory group. And there's even a handy letter on there that encourages young people how to approach a parent, is they a teacher or an ally, to just start that conversation. So if you feel it, like, you feel it, you need it, and you want it, make sure that you check out that handout, because it really just allows for you to be able to express yourself. And if anything, all of us here on this panel can probably share that we've heard a lot of stories of youth who share that they never access support because they didn't think that they needed it or warranted it, that their problems weren't enough. And so it's one key thing that I'm grateful that our panel shared, is that if you want to talk about it, then it's enough. That's all you need. All right, so continuing with our panel, thank you. You know, talking about things that everyone is going through and being alone, the monotony of every day, you know, I think before we started, Lisa asked us a great question of how many Zoom meetings we had to do today. And Emily won with her 8 meetings. I actually had only 3. I'm very grateful for that. But that monotony, that feeling that nothing is gonna go back to normal, and that we're worried about what's gonna happen next. So I guess for you as our youth advisors and as youth on this panel, how do you deal with that feeling? How do you support developing your own purpose and direction at this time? And as you guys are thinking about that question, I'm going to add this other one. What are some awesome ideas that you can give our adult allies that aren't here? I know we have teachers, I know we have parents, I know we have other youth that support youth. What are some ideas that you'll be able to give them to support instead of worrying about like screen time, instead of worrying about all the other stuff? What are some things that you can tell them? So those are my 2 questions. What are you doing for yourself in this time to develop purpose? And how can you tell us, your adult allies, how to support you in this time? Go for it. Anyone who wants to jump in?
I can talk first. So I have kind of 2 things to say about that. One day at a time. That's the most important thing, I think, is just taking each day one day at a time. Because if we worry about too much about the future or too much about the past, then we get stuck in our anxiety, and that just doesn't do us any justice, right? If we stay present in what we're doing right now and today, I feel like it could benefit you a lot more. It can benefit an individual a lot more. But it's not always like as easy as it sounds. It definitely is super hard to let go of your anxiety. I mean, I too have anxiety. Like, I definitely have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. But that's where taking it one day at a time comes in, because some days we're not going to be able to be present in the moment that we're in. And that's okay. Just to be nice to yourself and to give yourself the love that you deserve. And then the second thing I was going to say is that for me, I have been writing a lot more, because sometimes it's really hard for me to express my thoughts out to other people without it sounding like brain poop. I don't know any other way to put it. So I started writing and just kind of like jotting down how I feel and what situation in front of me is making me feel like. So I definitely recommend that for anybody who really is interested.
Thank you, Alma. And brain poop it is. Go for it.
No, that was so funny. I think that for me, it's been really important to try to sort of reframe my thinking around the pandemic, so that I am obviously looking forward to the future, and I'm not happy that it's happening. But I also think like we've been in this a year now, and so sometimes just sort of reflecting, because at the end of the day, I do think that I've grown in a lot of ways that I probably wouldn't have if the pandemic wasn't happening, and I've found things that I'm really interested in. I like got really into yoga as originally a way to work on my anxiety, but it ended up being something I really love. And I think that identity-wise, I've done a lot of work figuring out who I am. So basically just sort of being able to say like, no, I don't really want to be here, but I am, and I'm looking forward to the future, but maybe there are things about this that can feel good. But like I said, none of us really want to be here. So also being just gentle with yourself and sort of taking the breaks when you need the breaks, and understanding that it's okay if you're not doing everything all the time. And then lastly, I think that one of the problems with the pandemic for me has just been sort of how repetitive every day is. It sort of feels like the exact same thing every day. And one thing that I've done to sort of help with that is just make sure that I'm throwing something in my week that feels like fun or different. Like maybe I've been driving somewhere else to go for a different hike, or driving to a new boba place and ordering ahead and picking it up, just to have something in my week that feels different and fun. So it doesn't feel like I'm just sort of stuck in this constant loop, not knowing when it's going to end.
Thank you, Zoe.
That's the second time I've heard this Groundhog's Day type comment today. It's just so notable.
Go for it, Mohan.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to realize that, I think Zoe mentioned this earlier, but I just want to say again, we are literally living in a pandemic. That is crazy. And as much as it's easy to get into that repetitive state and, get anxious, get sad that, things aren't really getting to normal, I think at the same time, it's important to applaud ourselves for, getting this far in a pandemic. And we're here, and it's amazing. And a mindset that I've tried to adopt is make the best of what I can. I'm in a pandemic. I can't change that fact. And there's some things that are going to be unavoidable. But what I can do is I can try and make the best of what I can here. I can try and do things that make me happy. I can try and break my routine, maybe have some fun with trying new clothes or something like that, online shopping, browsing, try and do stuff that, I'm going to say this again, I know I'm going to get really repetitive, just like your days, and ironic, but whatever. Try to do things that are going to make you happy. And I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, I was feeling very, very laid back, lazy. I just didn't really like where things were at. So I just shaved my beard. And I feel naked. It feels weird, but I liked it. It was a nice change of routine, and it made me really happy. It broke that repetitive cycle for me, trying something completely different. And I really liked it. It gave me a little bit of happiness, and I'm glad I chose that. And I want to continue to choose something that will make me happy versus continue to do something that I know will make me sad or make me anxious. And that's the mindset I'm trying to adopt. It's hard because there are a lot of things that sadly aren't in my control, but I'm going to do what I can with things that are in my control and make the best out of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohan. And Emily, I saw you reach for that mic mute, so go for it. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for noticing. And I'm kind of just like adding and reiterating everyone else's points, which are really great points that I definitely all agree with all of them. Starting with what Alma said, like, yeah, one day at a time is really a great like mindset to have. Like, and to reiterate everyone's point, this is a pandemic, and like, despite how much technology and medicine have advanced, that a lot of us are fortunate enough to be safe. We're human, so it's not really a situation that we're used to. Like, we're used to interacting and communicating with other people in ways other than just like looking at like a metal box. So like, it's different. And I think something that's like really important that someone else has brought up before is that you have to be gentle with yourself. And as much as you may be like knocking yourself down for like not maybe doing something that you wish you had done that day, that's okay. Like, it's perfectly fine. Every day is different, and some days we're more efficient and some days we're just not, and that's perfectly fine. It's like things are monotonous, so it's expected. And one thing that I have been trying to do for myself is considering like how unstable or insecure we are about like the future. Like, a lot of youth have missed out on a lot of like important experiences, like whether that's like graduating from college or high school, and you don't have a ceremony or a commencement, or if you're like, I don't know anything about college, so like I can't really say anything, but like I know a lot of my friends are upset about like missing prom or the second half of senior year, which is just like hanging out for like a whole semester. So that's like something that has really bummed a lot of people out. And we're just like itching and waiting for us to be able to go back and to experience those experiences. And something that I think both Zoe and Mohan said is that like we kind of have to accept that, yeah, we are here, and for the sake of like the whole world, we should do our best to stay safe and keep everyone else safe. But what's important to think that you is to like do what you can do to set yourself up for success after it gets better. Because even if not everything is the same, we might like forever wear masks, or just some big change may have occurred by the time we get back to normal. But something that I've always been asking myself recently is, how can I set myself up right now so that I can fully enjoy life and fully experience what I've missed, or what I hope to get back once everything is available to do those things. So, but on top of that, everything that I just said is most importantly just to be gentle with yourself, because this isn't something that we're used to, and for most of us, this is like going to be a small sliver of our life, despite how long and tedious this seems to be. We're rounding up on like around a year now in the United States at least, but you still have a long life, and you still have a lot of experiences that are waiting for you, and yeah, they're just waiting for you to make the best out of them.
Thank you, Emily. All of you have been so great in just offering a different perspective, right? Everything that I think we hear in the news is just focus on other aspects of dealing with the pandemic. But the fact that you're bringing hope to a lot of people is really endearing, and it really is connected in terms of being able to see that we are striving in this pandemic. And I think one of our panelists, one of our folks on the chat said that we're living and striving in a pandemic. Before we leave, I wanted to thank anyone who's been throwing in questions in the chat. Please continue to do so. We'll definitely try to get to them. The handout will be available after the broadcast, and if not, I'll share my email and I'll be able to personally email it to all of you. I know a lot of folks have been asking for the handout about the resources. And before we go, I really just want to acknowledge the parents that are here on this website, on the chat with us today at the town hall, and go back to that question. What are some really cool words of wisdom that you can drop for our parents and our allies and all these mentors that are trying to support you and might not be finding the right way to do it? And so we've been getting some questions of that in the chat, so I kind of wanted to throw that one back in there, and we'll just spend a couple minutes on that one so we can move forward.
Yeah, I had an idea about that, but I think one thing that's been really helpful for me is, as we have continued to say, this is our first time for most of us in a pandemic. And so I think for me, when adults are real and vulnerable with me about how the pandemic is impacting them and their feelings and their struggles, because I know we all have them and it's not just youth, I think it encourages me to reach out about my feelings more, and it also gives me a sense of feeling less isolated. So I think that being open to sharing, even though maybe it'll feel weird to be vulnerable about your own feelings with your kids, especially when you really just want to protect them from the world. But I think that right now that's really important. And it definitely makes me feel more ready to share when people are sharing with me. And then I think then when they do share, really just being willing to listen and not necessarily jumping to conclusions around what they're saying, or jumping to like, oh, this must be what's really going on, or trying to find the root that is there or not there. Like really just listening and being open, and sort of I think it's always good to continue to ask questions for clarification, but just not making big jumps, but really just taking what they're saying sort of at face value and then checking to make sure that you're understanding, I think is really valuable and helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe. Go for it, Alma.
Right. I definitely agree with you, Zoe. To add on to what you were saying, I think like, yeah, a lot of, I don't want to say all parents or a lot of parents, but I know a few parents who might like start to jump by their child or like youth in their life acting a certain way or why they have certain behavioral patterns. I will not call out any names, hence my parents. But you know, there's been a couple times where their parents tend to say, "Oh, you're on your phone too much. That's probably why you're super tired or depressed, or have a lot of anxiety." But usually, when you see that in youth, you want to try to find the reason that they believe that that is going on, because you're coming to your own assumptions without asking the actual person how they feel. And sometimes, and that usually just like pushes them away, right? Like you don't really want somebody to make assumptions about how you're feeling. You'll just probably feel a little bit belittled, like your experience is not is minimized to your phone, and or just minimized anything that you kind of assume about. I think another thing is that Zoe kind of mentioned, is that like to be open with the youth that you're surrounded by. And usually like when you want somebody or you want people to feel like they can come to you about whatever they're going through, you can't just be there for them when they need you. You need to be there for them when they don't really need you. And I think that's like one of the most important things, is because once you establish that relationship outside of kind of a crisis, it becomes they become to feel safe. They start to feel safe. People start to feel safe. And yeah, that's my piece.
Thank you, Alma.
I love that this is all coming up. This is part of my parent talk sometimes when I talk about empathy blockers and is a cold clinical term for it, but like empathic listening and supportive psychotherapy. You all just do it naturally.
Awesome. They do, right? Always impressed. We have time for one more question, and then we want to be able to bring in Lisa and have some of those questions from the chat. So Jules, if you can ask our last question of our panel, and then we can get started with the chat questions.
Thank you, Anna. So I see a lot of questions coming in the chat about self-care. So we're going to direct this question about self-care to the panel. So the term self-care is almost triggering these days, just because we say self-care and then it's like this performative action. But so with this need to, really have self-care, there's also kind of this term of COVID guilt. Like we really should be doing more, even though, there's COVID happening and we have all this free time, but yet we're stressed. So how can we really support developing a system of self-care that's focused on your mental wellness? And how do you see self-care modeled to you in your life?
I can start. So to begin, I feel like self-care a lot of the time is not really advertised, but like modeled to be like a formula. And it's like, I don't know, like an hour of outside time or an hour of exercise per day. And that's not always possible for some people, like youth and adults alike. It's just not possible, especially now. If it's not safe in your area, then you should go out. And there might just be different like situations that hinder you from doing what you used to do, whether that's like exercise or socializing. So I guess in a kind of weird way, but like rolling with the punches or just like going along with the flow. Yeah, that's a better way to say it. It's just like doing like just like accepting like what happens. It's like a very weird situation to be in. Everything is on lockdown. We can't do anything really. But I lost my train of thought. but yeah, like like just try to balance a little bit of like what you can in your day. So um there's also like, I think a big problem now, and also I just like had this stuck in my head, so I'll just bring it up now. Something about like screen time is like a big thing, and it's like having to do with self-care, I guess. You don't want to have too much screen time. And like, well, that was like, that used to be a big concern for youth and also parents. You don't want to be glued to your phones or your computers all the time. But you also have to understand that you don't necessarily, like, you can't exactly control it. That's basically the only way you can communicate with the people that you used to just be able to talk face to face with. So this is kind of just adding on to the other question about the adult allies. But a lot of the time I see like my friends, they're like, oh, my mom's telling me that I can't text you anymore because I'm spending too much time on my phone. It's like, well, yeah, but that's essentially replacing what used to be just talking face to face. So that's something that I feel like we need to, that is not, I guess, like as big of a concern in terms of like what you are doing on your phone. Like, don't worry too much about that. And yeah, for self-care, balance, knowing that it's different for every person. Like some people enjoy some things more than others, and at the bottom line, your mental health is a priority, so don't do things that won't help you. So don't necessarily just follow what's advertised as self-care.
Yeah, there's no formula. There's no like, these are things that you have to do for self-care. No. Mental health is different for everybody. People experience it in different ways. And that also means that self-care is going to be different as well. There's no strict formula that if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to feel better automatically. No. In the end, self-care is whatever makes you happy. And that is going to be so different for everybody. And it's important to remember that. Remember, don't feel like, okay, a lot of people do this to feel better. Let's say meditation. But for you, meditation doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel good. Then stop doing meditation. Maybe right now it's not working. And maybe it's not your thing right now. Maybe if you want, you can try again later. But it doesn't have to be meditation just because everyone else is doing meditation. You can have a movie night. You can cook food, right? Your version of self-care is going to be different than people's version of self-care is. And that's all right. It's okay to just do whatever makes you happy, whatever helps you relax, whatever helps you be in a better place. And I think that's something that's important to remember when you're talking about self-care. Just do whatever makes you happy. And I think Emily did a great job emphasizing this. I might have messed it up a little bit, but just do whatever makes you happy.
Thank you, Mohan. Go for it, Alma.
So really great points, Mohan, and Emily definitely like hit it spot on. I think something to add on to that is that again, two things. Yeah, sometimes self-care looks like lying in your bed all day, or sometimes it looks like sleeping in 10 minutes extra than you have to. There's no point in beating yourself up off of really what you do. I believe. I think that sometimes we don't have enough strength or energy that day to get out of bed or to take a shower. And some advice that I was given by a therapist a while back was that in a time in my life where a couple months ago where I really couldn't get out of bed in the morning, or I couldn't go to school, or I would just sleep all day. She told me that to congratulate myself and to really like cheer myself on for the little things that I do in the day, whether that be eating a meal or taking a shower or getting ready. Those are the things that we do every day that we take for granted as being hard or difficult to do, because sometimes they are. And I think maybe like parents a good thing that you can do to the youth that you're surrounded by. Congratulate them, really, if they're having a hard time, like that week or that day. Like, good job, you drank water, you are taking care of yourself, you took a shower, you brushed your teeth. Because that little congratulations, that love goes a long way for somebody.
Awesome. Thank you, Alma. Thank you all for just being amazing and providing some of your insight and your own lived experience and how you've been dealing with this pandemic. For all of us at the Stanford Center, we are just honored to work with each and every one of you every day in terms of building alcove and just doing this amazing work. So thank you for us. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, who I know has some questions that she wants to ask our panelists. So go for it.
Maybe I can just take a minute to first say thank you so much, Alma, Mohan, Zoe, and Emily, for sharing your insights. I'm getting messages on my phone and on Slack and on my email about what amazing speakers you all are. You are speaking to a range of people, from parents to youth to teachers, clearly. And you're definitely speaking to me, Alma, when you said, when parents ask why your kids are tired or unmotivated and we accuse the phone. I've definitely been that parent. So we as parents super appreciate hearing from you. And that is kind of the first question that I'm going to go with. There are a lot of questions on here from your parents and teachers and people who work in your schools who want to know how to best support you. And leading off from what Alma said in her last comment was kind of about cheering on and congratulating the little things. And so I'll point that out to some of the folks asking questions. I think that's a really concrete thing that all of us can do. And maybe we can go around the panelists and we'll come back to you at the end, Alma, see if you have another suggestion about other things that your teachers and parents and people who work in your schools can do to support you during this time. Anyone can start.
I guess I would say that I think that as parents, one thing that matters to me a lot is kind of, as we talked about before, even like listening and trying not to sort of like, because I know, okay, I'll give a specific example. So I'm doing college from home right now, living with both of my parents, and we also have two of my friends from college living with us too, which was already really nice of my parents. But anyway, so we're all obviously like pretty stressed doing college from home and just doing college already. We're taking hard classes. We're finally like in our second year. And so I think sometimes, like if we have a test or something coming up and I'm starting to explain that I'm stressed about it, I think on the one hand, kind of not going right to like fixing that or like, you don't need to be stressed or like blah, blah, blah. But I think sort of in line with Alma saying like this like idea of congratulating, I think that just reminding us where we are in the world right now. Like sometimes if I'm telling one of my parents how stressed I am and like, this is the studying that I've done and I don't know if I need to do more studying or what, I think that they're really good about saying, this is where we are right now. You've worked this hard, you're doing what you can. And if you can do more and have ideas about what you want to do, like that's great. And we can talk about that or not. But not like pushing like, oh, you should do this, or not pushing it like, no, like you're fine. But just sort of leaving an open door to whatever the stress is. And maybe this is what you need, and maybe this is what you need, but really just kind of being willing to explore the options, I think is really important rather than jumping straight to fixing. And I think that can really go for everybody, but just listening and then being open to exploring options rather than sort of giving your concrete answer one way of either don't, you're going to be fine, or like you should do this or this or this, but just leaving room.
Thanks, Zoe. Mohan, Emily, you want to share?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thank you, Zoe. That was great. I'm like really like touched and like happy to see that like so many parents are like trying to reach out now, because that's definitely something that I wish my parents did more. I mean, they're great parents, but like, I don't know, like talking about mental health, sometimes it's just like really weird to like start that conversation with your kid. And I like admire parents that are trying to do that. So like, thank you. I think like it's important to establish that relationship, that like you are a possibility, like Zoe said, just like being an open door and like establishing that you are there for them, even if like I think at the bottom line, if like whoever whatever youth you're surrounded by ultimately don't decide to come to you, they have their reason for that. And I think what's more important is that they do have some kind of support, whether that's through a friend or maybe like a teacher or just some other mentor. And like if it is a parent, that's awesome, but I think like support comes in all different like shapes and sizes. So it's just like whatever the youth ultimately benefits the most from. But for parents to like, I guess, establish themselves as that kind of relationship that's open is like definitely something that I don't have like a straight answer for. I think it's like a really hard question to answer, and I don't really know how I would go about it either. But something that I think is important is to know is that like none of us really have answers. I think like parents or like adults in general have their way of coping with something, but that might not work for other people. And like everyone else and like all the other panelists have said, it's like a lot of adults tend to like try to jump to conclusions or just quick to try to act and fix the situation, when in reality, a lot of the time, what, at least for myself, the best supports that I've gotten is not like an immediate answer, like call this number to contact a therapist, but instead just to be able to have someone to talk it through with, and not necessarily like get an answer, because that's not always what I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm just like confused about like why I'm feeling some certain way, and I don't know why. So like I guess like adults asking like, oh, why do you feel so tired all the time, or like why do you have pimples? I'm like, I don't know, like I don't want them, but it's like it's what's happening. So definitely just being like open to talk and not really try to act all the time, although acting can help in the long run. But like to start that conversation, I think just talking is a great way to start, and just I guess reminding the youth that you are a possible option for them. That's I guess what I would suggest.
I really wanted to really fast, sorry, really quick, but I really wanted to hone in on one thing Emily said, which is like this idea that we don't all have the answers. And I think that one thing I would tell adults out there is to not feel afraid to say you don't have the answer. I think that it can be really sometimes just validating, like as a youth, if you don't have the answer, to know that maybe an adult you admire also doesn't know the answer. And I think that it even more opens a door for you to kind of team up and find the answer. But I just definitely wanted to point out that I think it's really important and okay for adults to not know the answer.
Thanks, you guys. This is so great. I see there, the reason I asked this question is there's lots of people in the Q&A who have said, should we try journaling? Should we try walking? Should we try art? Should we try, lots and lots of ideas? And I think what we're hearing is really being open to working with the youth in your life, the young people in your life, to find the answers together and not try and solve the problem on your own. So this is really good. Mohan, do you want to share?
It'll be really quick, but since we came to the topic of parents, I just wanted to emphasize something that to the parents, don't underestimate how much something will mean to someone. I think it's important to understand that that one little thing could have shattered everything in their lives. And it may be easy to just say, oh, it's just one bad grade, or, oh, it's just one friend, right? But our emotions are different for everyone. And the way we will feel something is different from how someone else will feel something. So when we're talking with, I say our kids, I'm not a parent, but when we're talking with our kids, it's important to just understand that, we don't know how they feel, and we can't imagine. We don't know how they feel, but we're open to understanding how they feel, and we're open to talking about it. And I think that means a lot. Expressing that you want to understand your child better, expressing that you want to be able to help them in any way you can, and expressing that their emotions are valid. What they're feeling does matter. They're not just some stupid thing that will go away. No, every single thing that your kid will feel, it matters. It really, really does matter. And you want to be there. You want to be there for them as early as possible. You don't want little things to add up until it's too late. Just be there for them while you can. And I think that's just a message I'd like to say to parents.
Well said. My God.
Alma, I said I'd come to you last. You got us kicked off, got me thinking about this idea and answering this question. I don't know if you want to add on to what you said in the beginning.
I definitely would like to add on to what Zoe, Mohan, and Emily were kind of discussing about, especially like Mohan's point. When you have youth in your life, a lot of us, it's a crucial time that in this time that we're growing up in with social media, with trying to build connections between people and our family members, a large thing that a youth seek is acceptance. And that acceptance is really to love somebody, right? To accept whatever they go through, whatever they're feeling, whatever grade they got on their math test last week. You got to accept it all in order for somebody to feel safe around you. And it's harder said than done. I mean, it's easier said than done. But as long as you're striving for that, striving to build that bridge of acceptance between you and your youth, whoever you're surrounded by, I think that everybody can see that for sure. Everybody can feel it. I know that for sure. And not just one thing, not just one method, like the other youth were saying, like not one method works for everybody. And even if it does, sometimes you grow out of those methods and you need to find new ones. Same thing for therapists, for different mental health providers, like mental health care providers. Not every therapist or psychiatrist is going to work for one person, one individual. It's all about being together and trying to figure out what works for you. And sometimes that takes 2 times, 3 times, maybe even 7 times. Hopefully that does not happen to anybody, but it does, unfortunately. So yes, that's what I have to say about that.
Thanks, Alma. I think a lot of that advice is good just for humans in general, not only for parents and youth or teachers and students. So I didn't see as many questions about this, but just knowing the teenagers in my life, I think this is something we think about. So parents and teachers, of course, want to know how to support you all during this difficult time, but I know that you all want to know how to best support each other. And I think for some of the young people out there, since we don't get to see each other in the usual ways at school and at activities and in person and kind of read people's body language and things like that, people want to know how to support each other, how to reach out, how to, if you're worried about a friend, what to do, what are safe ways to support each other during this time. Do you guys have some ideas you can share about that?
This is going to sound very, very basic, but just reach out. There are a lot of people in your world who you probably don't talk to as much because of COVID. And I mentioned this before, but just reach out. Just reach out. It can change people's lives, and be there for them. Contact them, check in with them, like maybe once a week if you're not that close, or if you would like to be closer with them, maybe text them more often, right? But it's so important to feel as if you matter. And even though, let me rephrase that. It's important for people to feel as if they matter, and checking in with people is a great way to do so. And the more you check in with people, the more they're going to check in with you as well. And you'll feel as if, you matter to them as well. And I know I'm saying this word matter, check in. I'm saying this a lot, but I really, really want to stress this importance, right? Just asking them, how are you? Hey, what's up? What are you doing? Or just asking, wait, what's your favorite movie? Just texting them, make them feel wanted. Just make sure that they don't feel alone. And by doing that, you're making the world a much better place. And, it may not be like therapy 100%, just texting someone, but it definitely can put a smile on someone's face. And I think putting a smile on someone's face is something that we take granted for, being able to smile. Some people don't have the opportunity. Some people, there's very little things in their life to smile about, and it may be your life as well. So just checking in with people, talking with people, reaching out, it really can change lives.
I totally agree with Mohan. I would also say I did see a question in the chat about kind of people reaching out a lot, and then sometimes their friends still just brushing it off or having kind of a superficial conversation and not wanting to share. And I think as someone who has been in a really hard place and who is generally not really much of a sharer, I'm working on it. I think that even if the conversations aren't getting opened up the way you want them to, just the fact that you're checking in really matters. I don't, sometimes my friends will check in and I just don't have the energy to go into it, or I don't want to. And it's I'm fine, how are you? And I always try to make the conversation about them. But I think that at the end of the day, it still always makes a difference to me that someone's checking in. And then sort of two more things off of that is one, but I do also think that there is a point that is harder to see right now because we are sort of mostly communicating through the phone. But there is a point where if you're really worried about someone, I think that, at least for me, I have had to make the decision before to go over their heads to try to get them other support, or to tell them that I am that worried and will get them support if that's the push that you think you need to take to have them talk to you or someone. I mean, I've had texts that I've sent that have said, look, I'm really, really worried and I care about you a lot. And I'm here to talk if I'm the person you want to talk to, but if it's not me, I really think you need to talk to someone. And when I've had friends who are not willing to do that, if I know that they have a decent relationship with their parents, I have called their parents before. And they're always mad at first, but it's always worth it to me to know that I took a step because I was trying to protect them. And that's always better than if something went wrong. And then my last point around that is that at the same time, we are totally responsible for our friends, and so many young people get friends, but as a friend, it's also really important to make boundaries and making sure that you are caring about this person and you're checking in with them. But it is also, their mental health is not the only thing that you have going on in your life, and it is not your responsibility at the end of the day. And so I think it is important to also be able to say, like, I'm here to listen, but I'm not trained in these things, or like, can I help you get more help when that time comes? Because you don't want to end up feeling like, you know, their livelihood depends on you, because that definitely ends up being too much.
Thanks so much, Zoe. Oh, go ahead, Alma. Great.
Sorry to interrupt, but Zoe, like, I totally agree with that. I know we were kind of talking a little bit outside of this as a group, and yeah, boundaries, that's super important. And I know, like, a lot of youth and just people in general might be scared to put those boundaries up, because either one, what could happen is that they could either stop talking to you altogether, and you totally forgot my other point, but moving on, it's super imperative that you set boundaries between the person that you're talking to and like your own mental health, right? Because yeah, we aren't trained professionals as youth. Most of us aren't trained professionals, and that's okay. We're the guides to the professionals. We guide our peers to seek that help, right? The help that they really need, the professional help. And you know, I mean, I've been in situations where I've told friends where it's like, okay, I can talk to you, and you can vent to me, tell me, like, I can give you some advice, but if you really need some professional help, I can go with you. I can be on the phone with you as you talk to your parents about seeking like outside help, right? I can even send your parents information more about mental health and different forms of therapy, things like that, and why it's beneficial. I think that's something that would be really helpful to do as a peer.
Thank you, Alma and Zoe, for talking about boundaries. I think as an adult ally, we're always letting our youth know that we know that youth are going to other youth to get information and to be able to share all the things that they're going through. We also know what heavy a load that can be. And so the fact that you guys are sharing about, one, being knowledgeable about being guides and connecting people to services, but also understanding that your own boundaries are also as important as whatever issues that your friends are going through. And this is when I say, talk to your adult allies, right? Talk to us, talk to your teachers, your parents, to be able to get that support and to not carry that heavy load on your own, but to also make sure that, you know, we're feeding what you want to do, which is what you want to help your friend. And so thank you for mentioning that, because I always want to make sure that when we have peer-to-peer interactions, that they also know that they're getting support for their friend, and that's not breaking their confidence, that's just bringing in more people into the circle. Thanks.
Emily, did you want to answer that last question before we?
Yeah, sure. I can add my 50 cents if I remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, so I'm really glad that they brought up the boundaries, and also I think adding on to that, like I think oftentimes you might feel guilty. It's like, oh, I'm pushing them away, but they clearly need help. Like, yeah, that's true, but to best help your friend or just whoever it is, like, you have to be in that position to be able to help them. So I think my other point that I wanted to bring up was communication. Like, it's important to like notice like whether like your friend has crossed a boundary that might indicate that they need serious help, but also so yeah, like that's one thing. It might be an indicator that something is seriously wrong. But also if I know, at least for myself, if I'm not in a good mood, I'm really not helpful, and I'm just like, I just want to get, like, if I'm not in the mood to talk and I don't really have the mental capacity or mental space to take on someone else's like thoughts and like I don't know how I could help them, then I would just say, hey, I'm really glad that you're coming to me to ask about this, or that I'm the person that you trust with this, but I personally am not in the headspace right now to give like proper and like an objective stance, or maybe like just a good emotional support. But if you're okay with like reflecting on whatever you're dealing with for like a little bit, for however long I may need to handle my own situation, then I'm like more than happy to try to help as much as I can. But yeah, it's important to know that, to remember that in order to help other people, then you also need to be helping yourself, because otherwise it's kind of just gets messy and everything can be just like worsened if you aren't in a good space to help. So that's another thing I would add.
I just have like a really small thing.
Oh,
I'm so
please.
sorry. A really small thing to add on to what
in the corner there. Go for it.
I'm sorry. But definitely, like, I agree. If you're not in the right headspace, then you're not doing yourself any justice, or the person that you're trying to help any justice. You're really, and it defeats the whole purpose, right, of why you guys are there, why you guys are texting, FaceTiming, whatever is the situation. So that, I think like that's a good opportunity where you can recommend some different coping mechanisms for them. Because, you know, like Emily said, sometimes you can't take on other people's weight that day, or you can't, you're just not in the right headspace to do so, right? To listen, to kind of give you the last of your energy that day. And that's okay. You can tell them, maybe try meditating, maybe try writing, maybe try taking a walk. There's many coping mechanisms, like say or write down 5 things you hear, 5 things you smell, or like 4 things you smell, 3 things you see. I don't know the rest of them, but there's good like grounding exercises that somebody can do. And maybe tomorrow you can go back and check in with them when you feel better. So I think there's a really good opportunity to start whoever who's seeking help onto like a new path of kind of self-help, if for lack of better terms.
That's great. I know there's some questions that people had around where to find some resources for things like that. I think someone asked Zoe where she does yoga online. So I want to just take a minute to thank each of you, Alma, Mohan, Emily, Zoe. Your words are incredibly wise. I think a lot of the advice that you have for your fellow classmates and friends is advice that we could give to all people, adults and young people alike. I know that parents are incredibly appreciative, as well as teachers, for hearing from you how we can best support. I learned a lot tonight, and I'm incredibly grateful to you. I want to pass the last word to Anna so she can close us out. And I know there's been a lot of questions about where to find more resources and how to get involved. I think some people want to invite you guys to their school to talk to students. So we've getting lots of requests. So Anna, I'll pass it to you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having us and for really supporting and providing this space where our youth were able to really share just how they're feeling during this time. In terms of resources, we hope that Alcove is going to be open soon. So you can find out more information at alcove.org. 2 L's, let's remember that. There they are. It's a center, it's a youth mental health integrated care center that is really focused on mild moderate issues, but we're definitely going to be having support for people that need longer term service. Those connections will be there. So our focus will be therapy. It'll be our peer support specialists. We'll have physical care. We'll have supported education and employment with Jules, and we'll also have some substance use support services. So all of that in one center. We're going to be opening in Midtown. Let's say that it's going to be in 2021. If I give a date, I will jinx it. So I'm just going to say it will be open this year. For more information, I put our email, so stanfordyouthmh@stanford.edu. You can also email me. I know I saw a lot of interest for the youth advisory group. So if you are motivated and you want to be part of this panel in creating these really awesome centers and movement towards youth mental health access, please email me. Also, the link for the application is the tinyurl.com alcove YAG app. And so that's something folks can access to. And I did check in with our Olivia from your staff, and she said that all handouts that I gave about the handout with the resources where all the numbers are there, the national plus the local numbers, more information on ALCOVE, as well as a PowerPoint that I've used to present on it. All of that is going to be sent out to all registered folks, and it also will be available, and we'll also definitely have it to share. So with that, thank you again, Lisa, for providing this space for us, and we're super grateful. And to my YAG, continuously amazed by all of the awesomeness that you all bring and this genuine space that you bring. So thank you. All right.
So much. And thank you, Claudia and Eric. You're awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Good night, everybody.